you can either be the hero or the villain here. This technology is going to disrupt society. That is inevitable. You have to get out ahead of this. Your tech is going to disrupt people's jobs. It's going to do a lot of negative things, but it's also going to do a bunch of incredible things. And you have to be leading in that way. You have to be proactive in that way to be viewed as someone doing good for humanity, while your technology might be doing the opposite sometimes. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of SmarterX and Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 167 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. We are recording September 15th, 9:15 a.m. We are, Mike, only like 4 weeks from Macon. I was thinking of this over the weekend, Oh my gosh, we got to start building some stuff for Macon. So we are coming up fast on our big conference. So I guess I'll lead with Macon since I'm talking about it already. So October 14th to the 16th, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're new to the podcast and haven't heard us mention this before, our flagship in-person event, Macon, is happening October 14th to the 16th in Cleveland. We started this conference in 2019. This year is trending in an incredible direction. We are looking at probably 1,500 plus attendees. The majority of the agenda is live at macon.ai. That's MAICON.ai. We actually made some really exciting progress on some new keynotes last week, so I can't announce anything yet, but stay tuned. Hopefully by this time next week, we might actually be able to announce some of the, might be a final agenda. There's a couple of moving pieces still on that main stage, but we're getting real close. So go check it out. Again, it's macon.ai, MAICON.ai. Dozens of sessions, I think 40 plus speakers, just an incredible lineup. I can't wait. I just need to create my opening keynote. So I'm doing the Move 37 moment for knowledge workers, basically. It's probably the most excited I've ever been to create a keynote. Every year I love doing my Macon keynote. It's always an original talk. This is probably the one I'm most excited to create. It's something I've been working on for years. And I just sort of forced myself to say, okay, I'm creating this talk for Macon this year. So it is completely original because it doesn't exist yet, and I have 4 weeks to create it. Mike is a session. We both got workshops. Just it's going to be awesome. So we would love to see our community there in person. Again, it's macon.ai. And then this episode is also brought to us by AI Academy by SmarterX. We've been talking a lot about that lately. It is a big focus of my time, of Mike's time. We've built out our staff to build out AI Academy, so it's where a lot of our energy and resources are going. We've talked about some of the new series. So today I was just going to mention the Scaling AI course series. This is the third one that I created for the launch. It's a 7-course series with professional certificate. It's built for, I have to say like director level and above, but kind of like existing leaders or emerging leaders, people who want to understand and take a leadership role in the adoption and scaling of AI within their organization. So it's got the AI Forward organization as course 1, AI Academy is course 2, course 3 is the AI Council, course 4 is generative AI policies, 5 is responsible AI principles, 6 is AI impact assessments, and 7 is the AI roadmap. So it really takes you on a journey of our 5-step framework for scaling AI within an organization of any size. You can learn more about that at academy.smarterx.ai. And for both for Macon and the AI Academy Mastery Membership, you can use POD100 as your promo code. That'll save you $100 off of either of those. So again, POD100 for Academy and Macon. All right, let's get into it. We had, I guess we ended up with a new model-ish last week, new Agent 3 from Replit, which we're going to talk about, and some progress on the OpenAI-Microsoft partnership that might set the stage for some pretty wild stuff this fall. But all right, Mike, let's get into it, the OpenAI-Microsoft thing to start.
All right, Paul. So OpenAI is a bit further along on its path to becoming a for-profit company because this week OpenAI and Microsoft struck a deal that clears one of the bigger hurdles to this transition, which is Microsoft's approval. So after a summer of fraught negotiations, the two AI giants have agreed to extend their partnership. According to a statement from OpenAI, quote, OpenAI and Microsoft have signed a non-binding memorandum of understanding for the next phase of our partnership. We are actively working to finalize contractual terms in a definitive agreement. Together, we remain focused on delivering the best AI tools for everyone, grounded in our shared commitment to safety. So, if this kind of goes through, Microsoft's tentative blessing seems to give OpenAI the green light it needs to start presenting its for-profit restructuring plan to state regulators. Now, that plan would shift OpenAI from a nonprofit controlled subsidiary into a for-profit entity, one where Microsoft and the nonprofit itself would each hold roughly 30%. The rest would go to employees and investors. Now, this overall plan to transition to this for-profit company is facing some fierce pushback. California and Delaware attorneys general are investigating whether the shift violates nonprofit law. Critics, including Elon Musk and Meta, claim OpenAI is abandoning its mission and enriching insiders. And some have even started citing these tragic incidents we're hearing more about involving ChatGPT and relationships with people to question the company's priorities. Now, the pressure has been so intense that the reporting showed that at one point, OpenAI's execs even reportedly discussed leaving California altogether. So, Paul, there's a lot going on here and a lot of implications, even of a short memorandum of understanding. What does this actually mean for OpenAI going forward?
At a really high level, if you're new to all of this, again, if you've been a long time listener to the podcast, this is a recurring topic. Every few episodes, it seems there's something else related to this, the OpenAI-Microsoft relationship and OpenAI's efforts to evolve the company structure. But if you're new to all of this, the basic premise here is Microsoft controls a lot of interest in OpenAI. They've invested over $13 billion into them. There is a contract that was created originally where Microsoft got access to the most advanced OpenAI technology, but that if OpenAI determined they reached AGI, then Microsoft would no longer get access to this. It was a big sticking point. But Microsoft has a bunch of leverage as well. So the challenge with this relationship is OpenAI needs to raise insane amounts of money, unparalleled in human history amounts of money, they think, trillions of dollars, never before done. But the only way they're going to do that is to go public. They're going to eventually not be able to do this as a private company, especially under the control of the nonprofit as it was previously structured. So all of this is all about moving OpenAI to a place where they can raise the amount of money needed to pursue their vision for omnipresent intelligence throughout society, basically. So that's like synopsis of what's going on. So there's all kinds of legal give and take that needs to happen behind the scenes. This is not easy. And then, Mike, as you called out, there's not even like a given that they're going to get approval from California and Delaware, or that some lawsuit like from Elon Musk isn't going to muddy all this up and just make this go on for a while. So I think everyone kind of assumes this will just work out, that like this will all get solved somehow. The lawyers will do what they do, and we will find a way to like move on, and OpenAI will eventually IPO and become one of the most valuable companies in the world. It's not a given though. Like there's all this stuff happening behind the scenes. So the joint statement, Mike, that you read was, I mean, literally, we'll put the link in the show notes. That's it. It was
That's
a
the whole
paragraph.
thing.
Yeah, that is the post. It's like the, I don't know, 50 words that Mike read. Now, it does link to a post from Brett Taylor, who we talked about, I think, last week on the podcast, if I'm not mistaken, who is the chairman of the board, CEO of Sierra. We were talking about his AI agent startup, Sierra, former board chair of Twitter. So Brett Taylor put out a little bit more extensive post about OpenAI's nonprofit and public benefit corporation vision. So I'll read a couple of excerpts from his post, and we'll, again, include this in the show notes. So OpenAI's planned evolution will see the existing OpenAI nonprofit both control a public benefit corporation, or PBC, which is also how Anthropic is structured, by the way, and share directly in its success. OpenAI started as a nonprofit, remains one today, and will continue to be one. with the nonprofit holding the authority that guides our future. This new equity stake would exceed $100 billion, making it one of the most well-resourced philanthropic organizations in the world. This recapitalization would also enable us to raise the capital required to accomplish our mission and ensure that as OpenAI's PBC, Public Benefit Corporation, grows, so will the nonprofit's resources, allowing us to bring it to historical levels of community impact. We'll come back to that in a minute. That's an important part of this. The structure reaffirms that our core mission remains ensuring AGI benefits all of humanity. We continue to work with California and Delaware attorneys general as an important part of our strengthening our approach, and we remain committed to learning and acting with urgency to ensure our tools are helpful and safe for everyone while advancing safety as an industry-wide priority. So that sentence there is very intentional based on what Mike alluded to of the growing concerns, including I think it's the FTC we'll talk about in a minute, that's exploring the use of ChatGPT as a companion and the impact it's had on some recent cases of suicides. So there's a lot of very, very strategic language in this post from Brett Taylor. And then the final excerpt I'll read, which leads into the other point I want to make here. So Brett continued to write, as part of this next phase, the OpenAI nonprofit has launched a call for applications for the first wave of a $50 million grant initiative to support nonprofit and community organizations in 3 areas. And now we're about to get our preview of what this $100 billion stake in OpenAI is going to be for. The 3 areas Brett calls out: AI literacy and public understanding, community innovation, and economic opportunity. He writes, this is just the beginning. Our recapitalization would unlock the ability to do much more. Now, the $50 million grant initiative they allude to links to another post from September 8th on the OpenAI website. I don't remember if we talked about this, Mike. This is the first time I recall seeing the name of this fund. But this fund that's going to provide the $50 million grants is a People First AI Fund. That is the name of it, People First AI Fund. So what is the People First AI Fund going to do? Which, by the way, this is part of the reason on the messaging, we are very intentional about not always saying AI first, because it implies people aren't first. So it's interesting to me that OpenAI is sort of like leaning in this people first direction with their messaging. Okay, so this is now excerpt from this post, which we also will link to. Literally the URL is People First AI Fund. We believe AI should help solve humanity's hardest problems, and that we should listen to and learn from organizations already leading that work on the front lines. Today, we are excited to share that applications for the first wave of grants are open. Grants will be unrestricted, reflecting our commitment to support the expertise of nonprofit and community-based organizations. Application window will close on October 8th, 2025. So if this is you, like if what we're reading here fits you got 3 weeks to get your application in for the first slug of 50 million, but there's 100 billion more coming, so don't worry about it. Grants will be distributed by year's end. So what they're basically doing here is they're racing to distribute money to show their positive impact on society and people. So as they're going to California and Delaware begging for the permission to do what they need to do, they're already taking action to say, look, if we have access to this money, this is the kind of thing our nonprofit will be able to do. We've already done it. Now, mind you, there's probably like an actual like human good intended behind this, but this is all very intentionally being accelerated to show a positive impact on society, in my opinion. So the People First AI Fund will support organizations directly working in the 3 areas that we called out from Brett Taylor's post: AI literacy and public understanding. Now this is from their post. We seek to support organizations that help communities build the knowledge, skills, and confidence to navigate the age of artificial intelligence. This includes education programs, media initiatives, and opportunities for people to engage with and better understand the technology. They're specifically interested in equipping people with practical skills that may involve training local leaders such as educators, faith leaders, youth mentors, and artists. The community innovation side, they say the priority is to back efforts to ensure AI strengthens civic life and helps people stay healthy, connected, and thriving. And then economic opportunity, this could include programs that prepare people, especially young people, for the jobs of the future, tools that support caregivers and local businesses, and initiatives that help workers build economic security. They do say the fund is the early step in a larger vision to ensure the intelligence age is shaped by listening, learning, and building with, not for communities. We look forward to working with our grant partners and learning from it. And then they do call again at the end that the People First AI Fund is intended for U.S.-based nonprofits with valid 501c3 status. Organizations may only apply once to be considered for the fund. So a lot going on here. Like I said, the biggest issue is they have to change structure to IPO to raise the amount of money they envision needing. To do that, there's a whole lot of stuff that has to happen behind the scenes, including a lot of politics that has to happen behind the scenes. And they need to be seen. Like I've used this line. I don't know if I've said this publicly, but I've used this line with some technology companies. You can either be the hero or the villain here. Like this technology is going to disrupt society. That is inevitable. It will be viewed as a negative by large portions of society as they are impacted by it. The way as a technology company, again, part of this is putting my communications marketing hat on, you have to get out ahead of this. Like your tech is going to disrupt people's jobs. It's going to do a lot of negative things in society, but it's also going to do a bunch of incredible things in society. And you have to be leading in that way. You have to be proactive in that way to be viewed as someone doing good for humanity while your technology might be doing the opposite sometimes. So this is where lobbying efforts are going to be massive. It's where building this kind of program where you're giving tons of money away. The economic opportunity, I can almost guarantee you, has some element of universal basic income envisioned into it where they're going to pay people to not have jobs. We're leading off with this episode because this is a very, very far-reaching topic that will, if you understand what's going on with OpenAI, you will have a greater grasp of what's going to be happening in society for the next 10 years, basically.
Not to mention, this might be going a bit out on a limb here, but it is not simply, in my opinion, a story of a massive high-growth company trying to get ahead of regulation or government overreach. At some point, the scale of this gets so large, this is intimately entwined with the government at some point. Yeah. We've talked about that a bit in the situational awareness from Leopold Aschenbrenner. I'm not saying that OpenAI gets nationalized, but what you're talking about when it comes to universal basic income, that inherently becomes, whether it's OpenAI doing it or a consortium of companies, that becomes very intimately linked with society and civic life, not just market.
Yes, and we've talked a lot about jobs and the economy recently. We've got another topic today related to this. All of this is intertwined. Yes, you're 100% right, Mike. And the executive order to prioritize and fund AI literacy through the government, you're going to see, an avalanche of state and federal initiatives around AI literacy and reskilling professionals because, again, they all now know what's happening. Jobs numbers are starting to indicate it, and that's what we've been waiting for. Well, not we, it's what they have been waiting for, is actual data to prove this is all happening. So yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of entering this point of no return where all the people in power now realize the disruptive nature of AI and how quickly it could happen. And so there's going to be this massive effort, both private and federal, private and government, to try and solve for this before it becomes like a runaway train, basically.
All right, our second big topic this week, AI coding platform Replit just raised $250 million and tripled its valuation to $3 billion. But the real headline is that it also launched something called Agent 3. This is a next-gen AI developer agent that can build apps almost entirely on its own. So Agent 3 doesn't just suggest code. It actually tests it, fixes bugs, and clicks through your app like a real user to make sure everything works, all without needing constant human input. So CEO Amjad Masad said in a post on X, quote, Agent 3 is 10x more autonomous. It keeps going where others get stuck. The full self-driving moment of software. He also says it has 10x longer fully autonomous runs than its predecessor, Agent 2. So Agent 3 can run autonomously, fully autonomous for over 3 hours straight, which is about 10x more than Agent 2 could do. Now, also behind the scenes, Replit's growth has been honestly insane. Annual revenue, this is not a typo, jumped from 2.8 million to 150 million in under a year. There are now 40 million users, and they have enterprise clients like companies like Zillow and Duolingo. So, Paul, first maybe talk to me about Agent 3, about Replit's claims here about it being 10x more autonomous. Like, is that legit? And what does that actually mean? Has there been some breakthrough in agents here?
So this is a really important concept to understand, and also to delineate between some of the ways we've talked about previous measurement of autonomy and how they're kind of positioning it. So at a really high level, like the main takeaway here is the way these labs are thinking about the future of AI development and the impact it'll have on society and the economy is how long can these things work reliably without human intervention? And so if you remember, again, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, episode 152 it was June 10th of this year, and then earlier in episode 140, which was in March of 2025, we talked about this 7-month rule, which is METR, M-E-T-R. It's Model Evaluation and Threat Research. So it's an organization, the CEO is Beth Barnes. And what they have is the 7-month rule, which is they look at the model's ability, like a 50% chance of successfully completing a task of how long it would take a human to do it. And what they're saying is every 7 months, it's doubling. So right now, what the latest METR research was in March of this year was that AI models had the 50% chance of successfully completing a task that would take an expert human 1 hour. So now this was specific to coding, and that's a really important criteria. Anything we're talking about right now, whether it's related to Replit Agent 3 or this METR rule, is all related to like computer programming. In Replit's case, it's like building apps, writing software basically, not doing legal work or doing marketing work or things like that. So we're like separate out that we're talking specifically about software at this point in coding. So in the METR research, so it was an hour in March. 7 months prior to that, it was 30 minutes. 7 months prior to that, it was 15 minutes. So what they're finding, and it's kind of like a potential scaling law, is that every 7 months, it's doubling. So, the theory then would be by August, you should be at basically 2 hours, 50% chance 2 hours. So now, interestingly, when GPT-5 came out, METR was given early access to it a couple weeks in advance. And they did find that it was basically continuing to double. So they found that GPT-5 is capable of executing in their specific testing any of 3 main threat models. They used their time horizon evaluation, and this 50% chance of success had jumped to 2 hours and 17 minutes. So it went from 1 hour to 2 hours and 17. So the scaling law was now continuing. So we had like 4 different milestones within it. But they did this going back 6 years. And so it has held. That is different than what we're seeing with Agent 3. So again, the METR is saying 50% chance of it completing something that would take a human 1 hour. What Replit isn't telling us is how long would it take a human to do what you're saying it's doing. All Replit's giving us is runtime, meaning the agent does this thing. I didn't see anywhere they said reliability, like 50% chance. It was just, it can do something for 200 minutes straight without kind of losing its thought process, losing its planning structure, things like that. Now, is that 200 minutes of agent work equivalent to 20 hours of human work? Like, what would it have taken a human to do it? That's what they did not share. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because Amjad actually tweeted about the METR research. He retweeted a post from like March about the METR research and said, yeah, we're actually seeing something different. So his tweet was, the METR paper says that the length of tasks AI can do is doubling every 7 months, radically undersells the scaling that we're seeing at Replit. It might be true if you're measuring one long trajectory for a single model class, but this is where an agent research lab's alpha is at. We build multi-agent architecture and use different models from various providers to tap into their latent abilities across various tasks. So I'm going to zoom out and explain what that means. What he's saying is, METR's research, which is the best we've seen publicly so far, that projects every 7 months, it doubles. So if you take a human and it takes them 1 hour to do something, in 7 months, it'll be able to do 2 hours of that human work. What he's saying is we actually rapidly scale beyond this by using multiple agents.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have an agent that verifies things. We're going to have an agent that creates the plan. So they're using multiple model providers because Replit doesn't build their own models. They're basically using, let's say they imagine they're using like an Anthropic model for something, an OpenAI model for something. Maybe they're using Gemini for something. I don't know what the architecture is, but they're able to use different agents to do all of these things simultaneously. So what their agent one in September 2024 did 2 minutes of runtime. Agent two in February 2025 was 20 minutes of runtime. Agent three in September 2025 is 200 minutes. So they're kind of following more, what is this, every 6 months it's 10xing?
10xing.
Is that, am I doing my math right in my
roughly,
head?
yeah.
Yeah. So they're on a whole nother level of scale of runtime. Now, the missing piece of this equation is what is that 200 minutes equal in human time?
Mm-hmm.
All of that extracted. If you go to their website, it is 10x autonomy. Like they are all in on we are automating human work. In this specific instance, automating computer programming is what they're actually doing. The key for the economy is, when do we see these kinds of scaling laws in healthcare, in finance, in marketing and sales and customer success and operations? We don't have that research right now. There aren't evals that are looking at that. That is the thing. And Mike and I have had, I don't think I've publicly said this before, Mike and I have had these conversations internally of like the need for those level of evals at a industry level or at a job specific level, because everything we're able to share with you today is coming from people who are doing this for AI research and computer programming. It's when you translate it over to your job and you say, wow, Mike spends 2 hours a week on this task.
Mm-hmm.
This AI agent is able to do that in 2 minutes with 90% accuracy. Things change when those are the kinds of statements we can make. And so that's the significance and why, again, like some of you, if you're newer to all this, like Replit is not a household brand in enterprises. Like it's not on the OpenAI level, the Anthropic level where you've probably heard of them. They matter though. And like what they're doing matters. And Amjad is a very intelligent CEO and they're doing incredible research. And this is the kind of stuff you will see. Google's working on the same kind of thing. OpenAI, everybody's working on this. They just kind of seem to be the one that's like publicly leading the way talking about it. And they've found ways to deal with the inefficiencies of computer use agents from Anthropic and OpenAI and Google that aren't working very well. They claim they've found ways to fix that. So very, very interesting research direction and potentially important breakthroughs when we like look back on this a year from now.
And really important to note, I was digging into where did all that growth come from, because 2.8 million to 150 million in less than a year is crazy. It's largely driven by agents. So that can tell you, A, I think they know what they're talking about, but B, there's a vested interest here, right, in promoting what agents can do. Absolutely. Because that is driving their business. I think at one point their business was really on the rocks before all this. So it's amazing to see. I have nothing against Replit, but just also important to note, like before we go tweeting that chart where they show 10x autonomy, right? Keep in mind that we have vested interests in certain things, and theirs is in agents being amazing.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean it's that for your job.
Right,
like that,
right.
And again, like is it the whole problem with autonomy is when it's talked about, people and even agents, more specifically, they assume it's transferable. That like, oh man, if they're 10xing autonomy, that means my job as, an HR professional or a lawyer or a CEO, I can 10x my performance, my productivity if I go get Replit. No, that is not what we're saying at all. But it's a prelude to the breakthroughs happen where the greatest value will be created, which right now is in AI research and engineering and programming. And that's why all the labs are starting there. But when they solve how to do it there in reliable ways, then it trickles out into all the other industries.
And I'm super bullish on agents long term, like we've discussed. I would just say if you are in a non-coding role, go try out OpenAI agent mode on 3 very different tasks, and then come back and you'll have a much more sober look at what's possible and what's not. And it's amazing. I like it, but you'll see the limitations pretty quick.
And deep research is another great example. Like it's incredibly impressive, but it still just has its flaws. And that's a great way to experiment with an agent is like go build a deep research project in Gemini or in ChatGPT and you'll see an agent at work. You'll see it do its planning. You'll see it go through a chain of thought. You'll see it, but it's not doing those like self-correcting and verifying the outputs. But that's all going to come, and that's the example here. That's basically what they've solved in programming is it can do the planning, it can create the the plan to follow. It can go through a chain of thought. But now they have agents within this architecture that then look at the work and find flaws and then self-correct the work, and then they like keep going. That when they hit a blockade, they fix it themselves. You don't have that in like deep research right now in Gemini and ChatGPT, but it's coming. Like all of this is a prelude to what will happen to the general tools the rest of us use.
All right, our third big topic this week is answering the following question. Should your company's next thought leader be an AI avatar? We've been kicking around that question internally because someone in our network who we know well, Databox CEO Peter Caputa, has debuted a new video course taught entirely by his AI double. So he posted about this on LinkedIn pretty extensively, both his experiments with AI avatars and now that one is going to be teaching a course from him. And this avatar looks and sounds like him. It's powered under the hood by the popular AI video and avatar tool HeyGen. Caputa wrote the script and it's trained all on, not only his visuals, but all of his knowledge and expertise that he's teaching in the course. So he said after some trial and error with lighting and camera angles, this AI avatar now delivers hours of content on his behalf. And he says it saves time while preserving that unique value he has to share because it's been trained on his content, his expertise. It's not just coming up with it on its own. Now, what's interesting is plenty of people seem to agree that using HeyGen for this kind of thing is useful because they just raised $60 million at a $500 million valuation, and they've got more than 40,000 businesses using the technology. So, Paul, the question here is just because you can do this, does this mean you should?
This is an interesting one. So for context, Peter and I go back a really long time. It's actually hard to imagine, but it's like 18 years we've known each other.
Oh, wow.
So Pete was the architect of the HubSpot partner program. So anyone who doesn't know, my agency that I sold in 2021 was HubSpot's first partner back in 2007. So we were the origin of their HubSpot partner ecosystem. Pete was the guy internally within HubSpot that pushed heavily to build around outside partners, that he believed that agencies could build, be a value-added reseller network. There were other people within HubSpot that believed this also. This is like year 2 or 3 of HubSpot. This is the very, very early days. And so I would sit in meetings and we would talk about these things, and they would look at what we were doing at my agency and think, wow, could we scale that to thousands of agency partners that can resell and then add value-added services to the software. So Pete was the guy who had an agency, then he came to HubSpot, and so he saw the potential for this. So in the very early days of HubSpot, 2007, 2008, Pete and I worked very closely on what we were doing at my agency and how that could scale. And then my first book, The Marketing Agency Blueprint in 2011, became kind of a catalyst for the growth of that HubSpot program, in part due to Pete's efforts to push me to share what we were doing. So backstory, I know Pete very well. So Pete has been the CEO of Databox now since, I don't know, I feel like it's 7, 8 years. I kind of lose track of time these days, but he's been there for a while. So I see this post from Pete on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this. But to Pete's credit, Pete is he loves to stir things up. He is very comfortable with creating conflict and letting people kind of argue out a point. And so knowing that about Pete, I'm like, all right, I'm either going to get drawn into posting a comment on here or whatever. So I didn't comment, but then I was thinking about it. And so when I went to write the editorial for the Exec AI newsletter this week, in the Smarter Exec AI newsletter, I was like, you know what, I'm going to address this. I think this is a really important topic. And my premise here is, I don't agree with him. I feel the opposite. I think that the human component of the course is maybe the most important part. And so I can't even fathom using an AI avatar in my place to teach a course. And as someone who just spent hundreds of hours of my life as a CEO who doesn't have the time to spend hundreds of hours on this, but I just spent hundreds of hours creating 20 courses and recording them myself, no AI avatar involved. I can't even imagine having used an avatar to do it.
Right.
That doesn't mean Pete's wrong. And so this is where I kind of land on this. And this is why we wanted to address this as like a main topic. All of us have to make this choice. The technological limitations of avatars are going away. So the nuances of like the hands, the blinking of the eyes, that just kind of like uncanny valley feel where it's like we're kind of there. Like it feels like it might actually be Pete. I'm not sure right now if it's Pete or not. Um, that's going away. Like we're going to get to the point where you just don't know, and you can't know. Like unless you have access to the metadata and you know where the thing came from, videos in the very near future are going to just be indiscernible from reality. You could argue in some cases they're already there. There was, and actually part of the reason I decided to do this as the newsletter last week was there was a point last week with the president where there was a video in the Oval Office and it went crazy on X because people thought it was a AI avatar of him. And I'm not convinced it wasn't. Like there was some nuances to it where you're like, yeah, that actually might be. And so now we're in this realm where even in politics, we're not sure. Like we have to question it and you have to really analyze to know whether it was or not. So my whole point was in my newsletter editorial. I'll just read kind of the end because it kind of makes the point here. So for me, personal connection and authenticity is essential when communicating with my audiences. That doesn't mean I disagree with Caputa's choice and strategy for him and his brand. It is a subjective decision. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong. If you go to the LinkedIn post, you'll see the comments is like 50% love it, 50% are like, ew, like this feels wrong. But the point is, as you alluded to, Mike, like HeyGen is blowing up, 40,000 business customers worldwide. So more brands and business leaders are choosing the AI avatar path. I think we'll talk about, do we have the podcast topic later, Mike, where we're like their AI is using to be generated podcasts?
Podcasts, yeah.
So the tech is getting there. We are all going to have to choose how we use AI to create our content, our thought leadership, our expertise. Can't fake me standing on a stage like, that's me. But you're going to, as a brand or as an individual creator or leader, have the choice to fake the other thing. And I'm not saying fake in a bad way, like deep fake the thing. And I know of brands, education brands, that are choosing to do this, that are scaling up content with AI avatars. I actually think, it wasn't part of Coursera's announcements, but Coursera really recently made a bunch of like AI powered announcements about how they're infusing it into their platform. And as someone who's the CEO of an AI education company, this is like, we have to think about this. We have to address this with our own team. Like, will we use AI avatars? The answer is no, in case our team is wondering. But like, this is going to become part of what you're doing. And then you, as the consumer of that content, have to decide if you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, is knowing that, like he said, literally, like, I spent 9 months writing these scripts. This is from 25 years plus of scaling businesses. It's all my experience. That is all true. Like no one's going to take that away from Pete, that you spent a bunch of time on the scripts and you put 25 years into this content. But at the end of the day, it's the AI avatar that's presenting it to me.
Right.
And so if you go into the comments on LinkedIn, some are like, yeah, the fact that you couldn't take the extra like 5 hours just makes me not want to take the 5 hours to watch it kind of thing. Like, and so again, you're going to have people who are just, I want the information. I don't care if it's AI avatar, whatever, like just give me the information. And then you're going to have people feel like, no, this doesn't feel real. Like I don't have that same connection with you. No right or wrong. Like again, the whole point of this conversation is to bring it up as a conversation topic that people might not be aware they have to solve for,
right,
or might not even know that they could create an AI avatar of their CEO and save a bunch of time. So I don't know. How do you feel about it, Mike? You and I actually haven't had this conversation of should we use AI? I've just said we aren't, but like, should we be using AI avatars in our academy at all?
Based on how much time and energy it takes to record courses, I would love to, but I'm like really against it personally because of what you hit on. This is not a knock on Pete. I'm sure his course is amazing, but if you couldn't bother to like show up to the studio, it's like, what am I paying for? Now, again, the context might matter. Like, what if it's a quick team onboarding training? Okay, maybe.
Totally.
Like, you could tell me on that. That's like, oh, okay, Mike's out for 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And even that would feel weird to me, though I could certainly grow to accept it because I think that is where we're going. I think it gets a little murky just because I'm so focused on the course thing recently and the value we're creating. I would feel the same way as if someone sent their AI avatar to a meeting. If you're
Yeah.
not taking the time to bother to engage with me, even if it's asynchronously via on-demand course, I don't have time for it. That's
Yeah.
just my personal perspective. I would
Yeah.
love to. I know that I feel confident in that perspective because I'm looking for a reason to want to be able to do this, given how much time it takes to record courses.
Yeah. And I think I was going back to the human to machine scale for writers. Like we talked, I don't remember what episode that was on, but
Yeah.
I shared like was that in March or April this year, we did our AI for Writers Summit, and
Yeah.
I did a keynote on like, when should you use AI to write? And my whole premise was sometimes it's fine. Like product descriptions, things like that. Like who cares? People just want the information, landing pages. But when it's like a keynote presentation or an editorial piece, like you want to know that that's coming from the person.
Mhm.
And so there is a scale of like when it's cool to use it, but again, it's the same for everybody. It's not prescriptive. Like it is up to you to decide where that comfort level is, and a lot of it comes down to what does your audience expect. And if your audience expects you to show up and be authentically there and to have put those extra 2 hours in to record the thing, you got to show up and do it.
Yeah.
If it's something that, like your point about, like, I don't know, I don't even know what use case we would do internally, but if someone came to me and said, hey, we've got this onboarding thing, we got this other thing, we want to teach how to build game plans or use Asana. Is it cool if we create an AI avatar of you that tells the story? It's like, I don't know. Like I would step back and think about, well, do the employees feel like it's actually supposed to be me? Like, is that an instance where I could see it being valuable? But again, people are making the case for this every day of, hey, Gen seeing that kind of growth. It's becoming a real thing. So yeah, I shouldn't even talk about this right now. So I haven't talked to Mike about this. I'll probably seed this. My team's going to want to kill me. So I want to actually start doing like an AI pulse is what I was thinking it's going to be, where we'll do like survey our listeners on stuff. And it's interesting because Sunday morning I was sitting on my front patio, like thinking about how to do this and what it would look like. And I was trying to think like what would be like the ideal things to ask in these pulses, that basically it's like real-time research that Mike and I would then turn around and share the next week. This might be actually the perfect thing to kick it off with, Mike, is how do you feel about AI avatars? Like, would you? So I'm not saying we're going to do that survey today, but we may in the next week or two, because I was actually going to schedule a meeting with Mike and our team this week to talk about this idea. We may do kind of these quick 1 to 3 question surveys of our audience and then turn around and like share the results the next week, because I would actually be fascinated to know how do people feel about AI avatars, and like, would you create one of yourself? Would you allow it to teach a course? So maybe that'll be our first AI pulse survey.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into some rapid fire this week. So first up, OpenAI just signed what might end up being one of the bigger cloud computing deals in history. They have a $300 billion commitment with Oracle to buy computing power over 5 years starting in 2027. Now, to put that number in perspective, OpenAI currently brings in about $10 billion a year, so it's committing to spending 6 times that every year on compute alone. The Oracle deal would require 4.5 gigawatts of power, which is roughly equal to what 2 Hoover dams generate. Oracle stock soared by as much as 43% on the news, which briefly pushed Chairman Larry Ellison into the top spot as the world's richest person. But this is also a massive gamble. OpenAI is losing money. They don't expect to turn a profit until at least 2029. And Oracle is likely to have to take on significant debt to build out this infrastructure. So, Paul, these numbers are pretty staggering. Like, how big a win is this for OpenAI and for Oracle?
I mean, stock-wise, it was great for Oracle. So I have to laugh about this one. So ironically, this morning, I'm driving my kids to school, as I do every day. And somehow the national debt comes up. My kids are 7th and 8th grade, so the 12 and 13. I have no idea of how we got on the national debt topic. It's only a 10-minute ride, so this is like a pretty heavy topic to have to cover and explain to them. So my son asked the question about, how does that work? And then my daughter simultaneously is like looking up what the national debt is on her phone and everything. And so I'm explaining this idea that like we're, basically spending more than we make. And like at some point, you got to kind of pay that off. And then I actually started explaining the whole Doge initiative with Elon Musk and cutting, spending. And then the big, beautiful bill shows up and throws it all into chaos, and then he fights with Trump. So like all of this was like a 7-minute conversation on the way to school. So I'm laughing though because there was this great tweet that I thought encapsulated this OpenAI-Oracle deal so well. It's from Yu-Chen Chin, who's a co-founder and CTO at Hyperbolic Labs. So we'll put the link in the show notes. This is his tweet. How money works. 1, OpenAI signs $300 billion GPU deal with Oracle. Now, keep in mind, OpenAI doesn't have $300 billion. So they sign this $300 billion with the Oracle. 2, Larry Ellison gains $100 billion net worth, no GPUs shipped. 3, Larry invests in OpenAI's $1 trillion round. Now, this is hypothetical. They haven't had a $1 trillion round yet. But 4, Sam uses $300 billion to pay Oracle. 5, Oracle stock pumps again. 6, Larry makes another $100 billion. 7, Larry invests in OpenAI. So basically, we're creating $300 billion out of thin air. And so that, like, I had to then explain to my kids, like, the idea of the stock market and how stocks like move. And I was giving these examples, like, say, $100, and then you announce this deal, and now you have $130 per share, and then that 30. I'm actually kind of shocked we had this conversation now that I'm thinking about it, and they seem to actually understand it, which is the incredible part. But that's kind of what this feels like, is like, this is literally manufacturing $300 billion out of nothing by signing a deal that pumps the Oracle stock, which then makes Larry Ellison richer, which allows him to then invest in the next round of funding for OpenAI, which then raises the valuation of OpenAI, which then gives them the money, which then they pay to Oracle, which raises their stock again, which they then invest in. It's hilarious. Like, this is how this stuff works. Like, so how you create the money out of nowhere it's just part of capitalism, I guess.
Yeah. And interestingly, and if they follow through on this, all of this made up imaginary money could result in huge amounts of real world physical infrastructure.
It turns into actual infrastructure. Like, oh man, how the world works is amazing. When you understand this, like, how it all works, like, you just look at the world differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to to understand all this and then be like, yeah, everything's kind of made up, isn't it?
None of it makes sense.
Right.
And that's how I ended the conversation. So I drop them off. We're like walking to the front of the school, and Balin's like, so the money doesn't really exist, but it comes. I'm like, all right, buddy, just have a good day.
Yeah, right.
We'll talk later.
I love that. All right, next up, Anthropic has agreed to pay at least $1.5 billion to settle a landmark copyright lawsuit, which is the first major AI class action case in U.S. history. So we've talked about this a couple times on the podcast. The company allegedly downloaded over 7 million pirated books to train its Claude chatbot. Authors argued this amounted to industrial-scale copyright theft. Anthropic denies wrongdoing, but is going to end up paying around $3,000 per infringed work. Roughly 500,000 titles have been implicated so far. So a federal judge, when we talked about this last, had ruled that the training on copyright books was probably fair use by his interpretation. But the issue was they acquired all these books from piracy websites and libraries. So basically that was theft in the judge's estimation. However, now what's happening is, though they have settled, this same federal judge, U.S. District Judge William Alsup, also criticized the settlement, saying he might actually reject it because he is questioning whether 500,000 pirated books is truly the final number and whether the claims process will fairly reach all the eligible authors. So he demanded basically a final list of works by today, when we're recording, September 15th, and a reviewable claims process by the 22nd. If these aren't resolved as issues, this could collapse and could go to trial, or the bill could be even larger. So, Paul, when we last talked about this, the latest update we had a few episodes ago was the settlement had been reached, but we didn't know how much. It is now, we see a massive $1.5 billion, but that number sounds like it could go up, or this case could even go to trial. I don't know how likely that is, but the fact they're questioning this already seems tough.
Yeah, the 3,000 per seemed really low, because wasn't it like 150 per is what they were potentially on the hook for?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about it at the time as like a potential, like, extinction risk event for Anthropic if they had to pay 150,000 per stolen book. So the 3,000 just seemed like a slap on the wrist, especially given the numbers that they're currently raising at. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. There was like 2 other, cases related to this stuff that we didn't even put into the show last week and this week. And I noted for Mike, maybe next week we do a summary of some of these high profile cases. there are a bunch of these things going on. Like
Yeah.
this one's pretty, far along, but I don't know, like this whole space is crazy right now with like what's going on. And now it seems like we're getting to the point where over the next 6 to 12 months, we may see some like landmark cases come through that start to play out where this goes. Now, the other variable we've talked about before is the federal government currently is not on the side of the copyright holders when it comes to this argument. And they want the AI labs just to take whatever they want, basically, to train and build these models. So there's always that risk that the government steps in and asserts some leverage here. So I don't know. It is interesting to follow. I kind of like, I was laughing to myself when I was thinking about this one. It's like, all right, so they're going to, let's say the fine goes up to 10 billion and, 10x it. Okay, each author gets 30,000, whatever. All right, just go do a deal with Oracle and then,
Right.
their stock will go up and then they'll invest in your next round and they'll pay the fine for you. And like, that's how this all works. Like, I can't see Anthropic going under as a result of whatever this number is. At the moment, they appear to be able to raise whatever they want. And so if it looks like they're going to get hit with a $10 billion fine, you just raise the extra 10 billion in the next round and you take care of it. Like, I don't, it is a pessimistic view, I think, of like how the legal system works, but that's kind of how I've always felt about this, is what I've always said is they're going to pay fines. They stole the stuff. It is plain as day. They all did it. Meta, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, every single one of them stole copyrighted material to train their models. We all know it. They all know it. The courts know it. It eventually just gets solved somehow, is what I truly believe happens, though, and probably through a bunch of really large payments to creators.
All right, next up, after a high-profile recruiting spree, Meta has, as of right now, poached more than 50 AI researchers from rivals like OpenAI, Google, Apple, and xAI. Many of them were lured with huge pay packages and promises of abundant compute. But now some of those hires are already leaving, frustrated by status battles and internal politics. So the company's secretive TBD lab, which they've created as part of their kind of Meta Super Intelligence Labs initiative, is now working just steps from Mark Zuckerberg's desk. And it's become a flashpoint because it requires special badge access. It's not listed on any internal org charts. And it's seen as a really important part of their superintelligence ambitions. So this is sparking resentment, according to some reports we're seeing, especially in the Wall Street Journal. Like legacy employees are demanding raises or threatening to leave. Meta says that their moves here were already planned. It's not about, poaching talent or anything, or kind of comparing to legacy talent. But we are starting to see kind of here, Paul, these cracks where like all these all-stars that they've recruited and paid a ton for, there are some ripple effects here. Not only are they not getting along with everybody, but now your legacy employees are starting to demand more.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they didn't see this coming. I don't know. Like I do this in any organization. Take any department and say like, Mike, say we did this to you. Like,
Right.
all right, we're gonna go get some new podcast hosts and some people who can create courses and like create content. And Mike, you've been amazing, but we're going to pay them 7 times more than you. And it's going to be in the media that they're getting 7 times more than you. And they're going to get offices closest to mine. We're going to move you just a little bit over there, maybe about 100 yards away, so I don't have to see you. And like, Mike's gonna be like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, let's do that. I feel really good about this situation. Like, of course you're going to have resentment and frustration, and the people who are there have been building the thing, and like, they're going to want more money and they're going to want to be paid like those people. I don't comprehend how this wouldn't have been foreseen, but I don't know, like they didn't prepare for it properly. But yeah, the fact people are already leaving, and I don't know, like we've talked about this openly on the podcast for the last couple of months. Like this just seems like a train wreck waiting to happen. Like you don't put 10, 12, 50 people in a room who are all now paid ridiculous amounts of money, who are all the best of the best, and think they're all going to get along and work really well together. And all the A players who are already there, Meta's stacked with talent. Like they're just going to be like, all right, cool. Like we're now not important. And like, I don't know. It's pretty predictable. It's I guess entertaining to watch to a degree. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, I guess I can't say I'm shocked. As amazingly competent as Mark Zuckerberg is, the fact he didn't account for personalities and feelings and interpersonal dynamics does not really surprise me.
Maybe they don't care.
That's the,
I don't know.
right.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just a yeah, I mean, that was the Wall Street Journal article. It was like, this is Meta's facing a quintessential management problem: how to recruit and retain top talent while keeping remaining employees satisfied and maintaining harmony across the organization. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know how you do that in that environment.
All right, next up, the job market may currently look fine on paper, but for millions of workers, it's becoming a real problem. So, according to The Atlantic, there's low unemployment and rising wages, which is great. But behind the scenes, hiring seems to have nearly frozen. They document how, for job seekers, especially young ones, the experience trying to get a job is kind of hellish. Like, applicants are flooding the market with AI generated resumes. Employers are overwhelmed and using AI to read them. And as a result, nobody's getting hired. For instance, one graduate applied to 200 jobs, got 0 responses. They have a bunch of anecdotes like that in their reporting. And it's kind of this vicious AI driven loop, it sounds like, where job seekers are using things like ChatGPT to sound professional. So companies deploy AI filters and chatbots to weed out that noise. Now, the reason we mention this, and we've talked about that phenomenon a little bit in past episodes, is because on top of this, at the same time, we're getting potentially a new preliminary revision from the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying that job growth through March 2025 has been overestimated by about 911,000 positions. So if this goes through, this would mark the largest annual downward revision in U.S. history. They're confirming if this will happen next February. Now, on top of all this, researcher Eric Brynjolfsson, we've talked about the past few weeks, who studies AI's impact on labor, had this to say about this phenomenon. He said, quote, "The big revisions in the jobs numbers have 2 important implications. 1, the economy is in the midst of a bigger disruption than most people realize. 2, productivity is growing faster than most people thought, because productivity equals GDP divided by hours worked. If there's a smaller denominator, it means productivity growth may be 0.5% faster than previously estimated." So, Paul, we don't know why the job numbers necessarily were actually so much lower in reality, but Brynjolfsson's kind of proposition here, saying that we're in the midst of a bigger disruption than many people realize and productivity is growing faster than most people thought, that's kind of almost exactly what we've been waiting or expecting to see show up in economic numbers as a result of AI's impact, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely what you would expect if the AI was starting to have that impact. And to remove the politics from this, because I know this has become a hot button issue in politics, it is a broken system. Like, these revisions are weird. Like, if you don't follow along how this works, you can all of a sudden think that one side is maybe doing this to the other side. They're making, jobs political so that we go into midterms next year. It creates some friction. That being said, it's how it's always worked. Like, it wasn't like this system was invented 3 years ago and now it's like, hurting the current administration or anything. This is the flawed system America has been using for a long time to do it. It's a hard thing to get accurate numbers. So it is a process they go through, these regular revisions. So CNN, there's an article we can link to that talks about these revisions coming. It says, prior to Tuesday's release, economists predicted that a large downward revision was likely due to 3 primary factors: weaker than inferred job creation at new firms, which could be AI related. They're not saying it is, but that could be. Sampling errors resulting from declining survey responses. So they depend on people who run companies to report this stuff. And if they're not getting the same reporting rates, then there's higher error rates basically in the data. And to some extent, adjustments for asylum seekers and other undocumented workers. So that could all play a role. So nowhere are, at least this article, saying specifically AI, but that is certainly the undertone of all of this, is that like maybe it is starting to have its impact. And then there's a Atlantic article that we'll link to that is "The Job Market is Hell" is the title.
Yeah.
And I'll just read a couple of quick excerpts on this one and then we'll kind of move on to the next topic. So it says, right now, millions of would-be workers find themselves in a similar position. Corporate profits are strong, the jobless rate is 4.3%, and wages are climbing in turn. But payrolls have been essentially frozen for the past 4 months. The hiring rate has declined to its lowest point since the jobless recovery following the Great Recession. In a recent survey, chief HR officers told the Boston Consulting Group that they are using AI to write job descriptions, assess candidates, schedule introductory meetings, and evaluate applications. In some cases, firms are using chatbots to interview candidates too. Prospective hires log into a Zoom-like system and field questions from an avatar, going back to our AI avatar thing. Their performance is taped, and an algorithm searches for keywords and evaluates their tone. I got two other parts I'm going to read, but I'm going to zoom out for a second. If you haven't been in the job market, or if you're not involved in the hiring process, you may have no idea that this is how HR is working right now. And that's why we thought it was an important thing to sort of bring to the forefront here is this is what's happening in the world. I have talked with people recently who've been looking for jobs, and this is the kind of experience that they're seeing. So the Atlantic article continues, still, a lot of job applicants never end up in a human-to-human process. The impossibility of getting to the interview stage spurs jobless workers to submit more applications, which pushes them to rely on ChatGPT to build their resumes and respond to screening prompts. And the cycle continues. The surge in same AI-authored application prompts employers to use robot filters to manage the workflow. Everyone ends up in a Tinderized job search hell, which I thought was a pretty funny way to describe it. And then the final, for months, the economy has been in a low-fire equilibrium. Virtually every sector of the labor market, except for healthcare, has been frozen. The amount of time a worker has spent looking for a job has climbed to an average of 10 weeks, meaning that Americans are spending 2 weeks longer on the job market than they were a few years ago. The share of American workers quitting a job has fallen to its lowest level in a decade because of concerns about rising prices and jitters about slowing growth. So again, everything may be gravy to you. Maybe you're working in the AI space and you're in high demand and you're seeing your salary going up and like things are good. And maybe you live in a bubble where things are really good. But when you get out of that bubble, things aren't so great. And it is really hard to find work, especially in that younger worker level. We talked a couple weeks ago about ages 22 to 25, like unemployment rates are like, what, 13% was it, Mike? And then underemployment, who knows? Like it's probably in the 20s. It's a very, very delicate market right now that could sway. And again, the politicians are very, very well aware of that. So anything you hear related to jobs, the economy, you have to understand where that information is coming from and what the intention of the distribution of that information is, because we are entering midterms in the United States in like 3 months. Basically, we're heading into that cycle. This is going to be a major, major topic.
Somewhat related, we had a listener of the pod kind of ask a question to us on LinkedIn that we wanted to address.
And this was public, by the way.
This was public.
Public post. He tagged us in. Yeah.
So Matt Brooks, basically after listening to us talk through some of this stuff in episode 166, kind of was asking, look, if companies replace too many human workers with AI, which some people are projecting, who is left to buy what they're selling? He said, what's interesting to me is that we're predicting tremendous value for companies as they adopt AI and reduce human workers. But if we replace humans with AI, who is going to buy the products they're trying to sell? I mean, if they're losing income or being, let's say, underemployed, even making less due to AI, Paul, how are you looking at that question?
Yeah, so I thought this was a really smart question, and I actually did comment on this one. So it's like sometimes I see these questions and I don't have the brain power available to like think deeply and provide a good response. So Matt's, I thought, was a great question and something that we're seeing a lot of. And I get this question in like private talks. So I'll go and do talks for executives, and I will get these kinds of questions quite often. So I thought it was great that he was, put it out there. So again, like for our listeners, if you post stuff on LinkedIn or even on X, there's a pretty good chance Mike and I do see it. Sometimes I don't have the time to like engage with it, but like we appreciate these kinds of commentary. And the whole idea that this podcast is intended to help drive these kinds of questions throughout society, like get people thinking about these topics and then asking the hard questions so people in their network start to think about these things. So, kudos to Matt. It's a great question. So I'm just going to read my response because it's probably the best I can do to respond to something. I said, so you're asking one of the most important questions. The first challenge was that economists were largely in denial about the impending impact on jobs because the data didn't support it yet, as we've discussed in this one. I feel like that mindset is shifting. We are now seeing economists asking the hard questions. The second challenge is that the AI labs and leaders building the tech that will cause the disruption didn't see it as their jobs to address the impact and help solve for it. That was, in their view, the job of philosophers, sociologists, and economists. They preferred to talk about abstract ideas like universal basic income, but with no actionable details or roadmaps. As we've talked about today, Mike, the People First Fund from OpenAI is a shift in the mindset here. So 2 years ago, OpenAI is doing a study on universal basic income. That's going to be the answer. They realize, yeah, that's probably not going to be the answer. We can't just assume that that's going to show up and solve everything. We need to invest heavily in AI literacy in the economy. Let's build a People AI First Fund and let's start doing something. So again, we're now seeing the shifts. The third challenge was that the government leaders didn't care because AI wasn't moving the needle on votes. As the impact on jobs accelerates, politicians are realizing AI may become a central topic to upcoming election cycles. So in short, we have no idea the answer to your question, Matt, but the people who need to care to create a sense of urgency seem to be coming around to the idea that it could be a near-term reality they all have to solve for. So again, we didn't set up the podcast this way to build up to this topic, but as you will see, all three of those things are things we've already talked about on the podcast, that all three of those stakeholders are now realizing what's coming, and they're all now trying to do something about it. Whether or not they're successful, I don't know. And I don't know what this looks like when people aren't making the money to buy the products and services, buy the goods, so we can increase the GDP. But who's buying it if they don't have jobs? That is the great question. If unemployment overall were to reach 13%, go like what we're seeing at entry level workers, if across the economy at 13%, we got major problems. And that's the stuff that I think economists are starting to realize, which I've talked about this, but I've had leading economists laugh at me 3 years ago when I was talking to them about this and saying, hey, maybe you guys should be doing more to model this and prepare for this. I literally had one leading economist tell me this isn't in his top 10 concerns 18 months ago. And I was like, I don't think you should be on a stage right now. This, yeah. So,
yeah, it feels like at the very least, we need more robust conversation around it, because I'm just so tired of seeing people say, well, AI is going to create jobs, or UBI or whatever. Okay, great. What's the next sentence? What's the next question?
That was the last, and we talked about this on the AI Forward CEO memo. Was it last week on the podcast? Where it's that's fine. You can state that. How? So what the labs have done is, I've literally listened to interviews with Demis, who I respect more than any of them, and Sam, who are like, that's not our job. That's what philosophers do. That's what sociologists do. That's what economists do. That's not us. We build the tech, and they could sit there and think about it, but that's not what they're going to work to think about. They're going to work to think about how to build the next frontier model. And so it's true. It's really not Demis's job to think about this, but hopefully the labs are going to continue to do more around this.
Well, like you alluded to, they now have the incentive to, because it may not be your job to think about it, but when there's real world societal impacts, your job is to figure out how not to get regulated out of existence because of the backlash around this, right?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So another interesting topic this week, a startup called Inception Point AI is betting that its business model, which is flooding the internet with AI-hosted podcasts, more than 5,000 shows and over 3,000 new episodes a week, will pay off. So they're using AI to produce podcasts at an extremely cheap rate. Each episode they do costs about $1 to make, and the dollars make sense. If 20 people listen, they said, according to an interview in Hollywood Reporter, the episode turns a profit thanks to the programmatic advertising attached to the episode. And that's basically their entire pitch: ultra cheap, endlessly scalable, fully automated audio content. So like I mentioned, they've done more than 5,000 different shows. They claim to be churning out more than 3,000 new episodes per week. Each of those episodes takes an hour to create. The company's digital hosts are AI personalities, and they're assigned to shows ranging from really mundane weather updates and niche biographies, and then also more in-depth, longer form shows. They actually use AI to generate topics based on trending searches, build out the scripts, and customize the voices. They also say they've racked up 10 million downloads across this network since 2023. They're experimenting with short form video and influencer style social media as well. And the CEO of this company said to Hollywood Reporter, quote, "I think that people who are still referring to all AI generated content as AI slop are probably lazy Luddites because there's a lot of really good stuff out there." So, Paul, love to get your take on this. I'll be honest, this sounds like a terrible idea to me. Like, I'm not offended at all. Like, I know that's where this is going as a podcast host. Like, I'm a realist. Like, none of this surprises or offends me. I'm just more like, I already think there's like crappy podcast hosted by humans out there, and I don't even have enough time to listen to the good stuff. So, like, I don't need more noise.
Yeah, I hate this so much. So, contextually, I was talking about my days with HubSpot. So back in, I started my agency in 2005. We were a content agency. Like that's Mike and I started working together at that agency. Mike joined us in
2012. Yeah.
12. Yeah. So you'll remember this era very well then, Mike. So Mike came in as a content specialist, like he was a writer by trade, and then, developed into, a leading strategist, and eventually played a key role in building everything we're doing with AI. Co-authored books, all these things. But in 2011, 2012, when I was building what we were building with HubSpot, when we were scaling a content agency, content farms were the thing. Where, like, let's say that, if you never hired a freelance writer, it could be, let's say, $1 a word, $2 a word. You're hiring them to like create a research report or write an article, write a video script. You would pay roughly on like a per word basis. Like that was kind of a common way to do it back then. So then these content farms show up in like, late 2009, 2010, 11, and you could pay 2 pennies a word, and people did it. It was because there was SEO value. Like Google hadn't caught up to this slop that was being created yet, and so you were rewarded in organic search results for the crappy content you were putting out. And so we were talking with companies at that time who were like, "Hey, listen, I know paying you guys $5,000 a month would help, but I mean, I can get like 10x more crappy content from these people, and they tell me it's going to help my SEO. So instead of the 4 posts with you guys that are like really high quality that humans create, we're going to have these other humans who are willing to do it for 2 cents a word do it, and we're going to create 40 crappy posts." And you're like, okay, well, that's going to crumble eventually. Like that's not a model that's sustainable. That is, cutting corners. It might work for 6 months, 12 months, 8. I don't know. But usually if there's like an ickiness to the strategy, it probably eventually falls apart. And I think this is one of those you're looking at, it's like, God, this just feels gross. Like, yes, you could do this. You could create a podcast. You can put it on YouTube and Spotify. You can juice it with like $1,000 a month in YouTube ads, which you can then turn into $3,000 a month in ads, like ad dollars in. Totally a viable model. Doesn't mean it should happen. And I can almost guarantee you there's no AI verification process in this. So you have these models creating this crap that like is a script that the podcast AI, hosts read. Nobody's ever verifying if any of it's actually true. It all sounds good, and maybe 80% of it's viable. Like, I hate this. Inevitable, but it's just a crap business model. And I understand that people do things to make money, and that's cool. Like we live in a capitalistic society that allows that to happen. Doesn't mean we have to like the fact that they do it.
Yeah, and you could interest me far more in a larger conversation about how AI generated content can be good. It can resonate, it can be interesting. There's nothing saying that that's not what they're doing, but this business is going to zero. It's an arbitrage of like the moment the platforms wake up to it, going to be like Google's Penguin update. Like those content farms went to zero.
Yeah, you're at number 2, and then all of a sudden you can't even be found in the search results.
Yeah.
But again, it takes the fortitude of the distribution channels to do something about it. So it takes YouTube being able to verify and say, okay, yeah, AI generated podcasts just are not going to get, shown up in the search results, or Google or, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's going to take them saying, oh, wait, this is ruining our platforms by having all this AI generated content. And again, I don't know this CEO. I don't know this company. Maybe they do have some verification process, and this is actually like really valuable stuff that people want. And maybe this company is legitimate, but it's just a blueprint for somebody else who isn't, who just wants to make money to show up and do it. So it's one of those where you look and say, okay, if that's where this is going to go, it's going to ruin the fun for everybody. It's what marketers do. Entrepreneurs sometimes do. It's like you get a good thing, and then like people show up and like, oh, I can make a bunch of money on this, and then they ruin it. And I don't want to see podcasting ruined.
Right. Same. All right. Next up, the FTC has launched a sweeping investigation into AI chatbots designed to act like AI companions, especially when used by kids and teens. So, the Federal Trade Commission is demanding answers from 7 major AI players, including Meta, OpenAI, and Character.ai, about how AI is being used to form relationships with users. So, obviously, we've talked about before, bots from these companies can simulate emotions, intentions, and friendship, and sometimes convincingly enough that users trust them like real people. So, we've talked about people from all walks of life, not just teens, forming deep attachments to AI chatbot companions, whether that's platonic or even romantic. So, the FTC wants to know what steps companies are taking to prevent harm, especially to kids. So, Paul, we've talked about this on a lot of episodes. I fear we will be talking about it a lot more. When I saw this, even though I thought like this is still very early and we'll see how it actually plays out, I did have this kind of initial visceral reaction saying like, thank God someone with actual power is starting to take this seriously.
Yeah, and again, this might be one of those you live in a bubble where this isn't a thing. Kind of like the jobs thing, like maybe everything's cool. Maybe you don't personally use them as a companion, and maybe you don't even know people who do, but it is like what are the top 3 most popular use cases for ChatGPT?
Yeah.
And I thought Allie K. Miller tweeted a good anecdote here. That I'll just read her tweet because I think it's a representative of kind of what's going on. Again, if you're not familiar with how this is working. So she said, weird story about AI companions and spouses. A friend was chatting with a woman, let's call her Steph, at the gym about mental health. Steph has been married 7 years and loves her husband, but has found a second companion in ChatGPT. She would have long live voice chats with a male voice in ChatGPT, first about basics like her workouts, then eventually about her whole life, including mental health support and discussing her husband. Her husband finds out she's doing this. They argue about whether she should continue, and he demands Steph switches the voice to a female voice. Steph understands his point of view and switches the voice, but feels like she lost her friend. We will hear a lot about parent-children dynamics as it relates to AI. We're going to hear a lot more from life and romantic partners. So I shared that and I said, reality is increasingly feeling surreal.
Yeah.
So again, just if you're not aware of what's going on, if you have teenage kids, this is a reality. Like the next generation, it's going to be normal to have these kinds of relationships with an AI. And again, like there's no right or wrong here. We're not, judging this person for their relationship with it. We are just presenting this as like, this is where society is going. And you need to be aware of that for many reasons, depending on where you are in your life and where your family and friends are. Things that sort of seem like they're straight out of a movie are going to be part of your daily life.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, next up, AI is transforming retail, and we've recently come across some fascinating case studies in this industry. So we wanted to quickly share those just because they're great examples of kind of what's possible here. These come from a recent report in Fortune. So 3 different companies using AI. First is Walmart. They've rolled out real-time AI systems across the US, Canada, Mexico, and Costa Rica. These tools now spot consumer trends as they emerge, forecast demand, and shift inventory before products run low. One standout system is called Trend to Product. It tracks signals from social media and search data, turns them into mood boards, and feeds those ideas directly into product development. Amazon has also deployed new agentic AI systems that can forecast demand, map global logistics, and coordinate robotics. They unveiled a tool called Wellspring, which is a generative AI that maps logistics networks, and an AI forecasting engine was also debuted that helps balance global inventory. Finally, the grocery chain Albertsons, which has over 2,200 stores, built predictive models that estimate how many shipments are arriving each day and then sync staffing levels to meet them. So the result is less overstaffing, fewer delays. They stock shelves 15% faster during peak seasons. They've also started using AI to scan messy supplier emails and PDFs, extracting delivery changes or risk factors that might otherwise slip through the cracks. So, Paul, these are the exact types of case studies and leaders we've been featuring in our AI for Industries course series and other Academy content through AI Academy. Great to see more of these being published and publicized, in my opinion. Did anything in here jump out at you in particular about how retail is using AI?
I just love to see the tangible examples. The whole premise behind the name Smarter X is you can build a smarter version of any business. So
Mm.
X is the variable. Like, it was funny. My son was actually asking me, what does the X stand for in Smarter X? And the X is the variable. You can build a smarter organization. You can build a smarter marketing department, sales department. You can build a smarter version of your career. Like, that was the whole premise behind the name years ago when I created it. And so I love to see these transformations occurring. And we get asked all the time, Mike, for those examples of
Mhm.
companies that are doing this well. This is actually the kind of thing that's the inspiration for AI transformation course series we're going to be launching as part of AI Academy Live. And then we're actually planning on doing an AI transformation series for the podcast where we go interview the leaders from brands that are doing this kind of transformation. So we're going to make an effort to do a lot more of this kind of applied AI on the podcast and through our courses, so people can get inspired by examples they're seeing of other organizations and realize the almost infinite amount of use cases there are for AI in business.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, to wrap up here, Paul, we've got a few quick AI product and funding updates I'm going to run through and then kind of bring us home here.
Sounds good.
So first up, Cognition, the startup behind Devin, the AI software engineer, just raised $400 million at a $10.2 billion valuation. This company is barely a year old. In a year, they've grown from 1 million to 73 million in annual recurring revenue. They also acquired Windsurf, which is an AI-powered development platform, which doubled ARR again. Perplexity, the AI-powered search startup, has locked in another $200 million in funding, this time at a $20 billion valuation. This is just weeks after its last raise at $18 billion. They pulled in about $1 billion total in funding every few months so far. 11 Labs, which we have talked about in the past, is letting employees sell shares at a $6.6 billion valuation. Again, double what it was just months ago. The $100 million tender offer is led by Sequoia and gives longtime staff a chance to cash out without waiting for an IPO. In some kind of product lawsuit related news, a couple things that we'll be tracking like we talked about on future episodes. Perplexity is facing a lawsuit from Encyclopedia Britannica and Merriam-Webster. They claim Perplexity has scraped their websites, plagiarized their definitions, and even misused their trademarks. Midjourney, one of the leading AI image generators, is facing a serious legal challenge from Warner Brothers Discovery, which is suing the company for copyright infringement, specifically for letting users generate images of its iconic characters. It is not alone. We talked about previously how Disney and Universal filed similar suits earlier this year. This next one might be something we end up revisiting. We'll kind of see how it plays out. A new wearable called Alter Ego just dropped, and it's being described as near telepathic. So this is born out of research at MIT. And what it does is it picks up the silent signals your brain sends to your speech system before you even say a word. So it's not really your thoughts exactly, but like what you intend to speak, which means using this device, you can type, search, or interact with apps using nothing but silent intent. The breakthrough that they're kind of touting is something called silent sense that captures everything from mouthing words to pure motionless intention. So it's like AI as a mind extension that could eventually let you have a full conversation without making a sound. And then finally, Notebook LM. Google has given its AI research assistant Notebook LM another upgrade, turning it into a full-on study partner. It now generates flashcards and quizzes from your notes, lecture slides, or research papers. You can set the difficulty, share sets with friends, and even ask follow-up questions to understand what you missed and why. It's also helping you create smarter reports. You can upload a research article, and it might suggest a blog post, glossary, or even a character analysis tailored to the content, not just the format. They've also got a new learning guide feature that pushes deeper understanding, asking open-ended questions instead of just spitting out answers.
Mike, I'm going to add a request for our Academy team, the Gen AI app reviews. So we do these like every week. I know we've got a full calendar coming up, but I would love to see app reviews of the learning guide and the guided learning that's available in Gemini.
Yep.
And because here's my use case. I've been using the guided learning to help me help my kids.
Yep.
And I want to actually take it to their school and say, listen, you all should be integrating this. Like you should, but I don't have the time right now to like build the deck to like pitch them on, hey, you should actually be very proactively integrating this because you have students who could benefit from this. It's just different than a standard AI assistant. Like but the perception at schools is that AI is AI
Yeah.
This is different. And so I would love to see more schools very aggressively exploring the learning guide within NotebookLM and guided learning within Gemini and ChatGPT, because my personal experience has been it is a game changer for working with your kids through problem solving, not giving them answers, but actually showing them how to solve something so they learn in the process. So they seem like really small announcements, like really small features, but when you understand the implications to them, they're potentially like massive transformations of the educational system. And I don't think it's being talked about enough.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get those on the docket. I'm eager to explore
Yeah,
those
put in a
myself.
request.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Well, thanks for breaking down another action-packed week in AI for us.
Good stuff as always. And we will be back regular time next week. Everyone have a good week. Thanks for listening to the Artificial Intelligence Show. Visit smarterx.ai to continue on your AI learning journey and join more than 100,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to our weekly newsletters, downloaded AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken online AI courses, and earned professional certificates from our AI Academy, and engaged in the Marketing AI Institute Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.